I'm trying to figure out a better way to maximize like review. So what do you recommend for like reviewing the tests or like sections, or like if you're doing drilling?
Yeah.
Other than just like trying to get the right answer, like is it useful to like because like when I try to take a test, then I'm trying to just like evaluate the argument and like predict the answer, pick the answer, and move on. But if I'm drilling, is it useful to like analyze why each answer is wrong? I'm just trying to figure out ways to go beyond my study just so that I can get a better grasp of concepts rather than just like being confident in easy things. If that makes sense.
You're trying to get more confident in concepts and instead of just feeling good about easy things. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, or just like feeling like, yeah, because like I feel like there's questions where you're like, oh, this is clearly correlation versus causation, or this is clearly these, and it's usually in the first like part of the test. But then as I get further on, it's like I might get the answers right, but I'm not confident in them.
Further on in the section.
Like, yeah, like in the later ones, I'm like not as confident in my answers as I am maybe in some of the earlier. So I'm just trying to figure out a way to like be efficient and then also just to be more confident in the answers I'm choosing.
Yeah, well, so one thing about drilling is that it's not gonna give you very many questions that are easy, right? For you, it's gonna be at your level. So if you're feeling like when you do a time section, yeah, half your time is kind of wasted because it's like, okay, these questions are easy and these older ones or these later ones are harder, and so half your time is wasted, but you get that experience of doing it in a timed environment. So I think the vast majority of your studying should be going back and forth here. These things are just like a necessary evil. You have to do them. So even if you did this every other weekend, I would be totally fine with that if you did mostly this. Now when you do these two things, this one, I would just decide every time you do a question whether or not you are like 100% confident in your answer. Okay. If you're not 100% confident and you're stuck between two, usually that's what it is, right? It's like, it's D or B. I'm pretty sure it's D, but it might be B. Write down the words, and like, it's kind of old school, but it might just be on a piece of paper or it might be in like Notepad on your computer. Just be like, I think it comes down to some in this answer choice, and it comes down to, red cars in this answer choice. Like, what is it that you think makes one answer choice better than the other? And try to be concrete. Most people say better or closer, which is vague. And so just force yourself to like pinpoint the words in the answer choices or in the passage that makes one better than the other, even if you end up being wrong. Because by making that commitment to a particular word, when you review the answer immediately after, right, because drilling, it's like one question, then review, you can, like, it's like you've made a bet, and you're like, okay, this is what I think it came down to, and then you look at the explanation, and you might be right, and you're like, oh, sweet. And sometimes you might be wrong, but the more bets that you make and then end up being right, that is going to increase your confidence. I think confidence tends to plateau when we don't make those bets. We're just like, okay, I think it's B or D. I'm not totally sure. Check, right? It's like B or D, and here I hate this, but I think it's going to come down to this word. And then you go through the explanation. It may or may not clarify. The explanation may be inadequate. If it is inadequate, hit that ask button and say, look, I thought it came down to this. Did it come down to this or not? But over time, that you'll get some wrong, you get some right, and then it's like, oh, okay, now I'm starting to see before I know the answer. For time sections, this is kind of tough. This is a rough number. I'm going to say 20. If you're not getting 20 correct in a time section, if you're 20 or lower, then I would say when you're done with the section, just start going after the ones that you got wrong. And just like, one thing you can do in the demon is you can hide the answer you chose, you can see which ones you got wrong, and then you just try to do it again there. You may remember what you chose or may not. But if you're getting above 20, so if you get like 21 plus, at that point, I think you're starting to get enough correct that it makes sense to do what we are kind of doing here, and that is you go to the questions that you flagged, and you are down to 2 probably, and you make a bet. You're like, okay, I think this is why this answer choice is better, and then you look at the explanation and see if that's why. One thing that's weird or interesting about bets is that like sometimes it's really obvious what makes an answer choice better once you've identified the word. Like, usually I think people are debating between the two because they're kind of looking at them like holistically, and then you're like, okay, well, do you think it's this word or this? You're like, no, that's fine. Oh, yeah, of course, it says some. I don't know why I didn't think about that. Or maybe it's a little more subtle. Maybe it's many or something like that. But then as soon as you see that, you're like, oh. And so then sometimes your confidence will just increase before you even checked. Of course, if you end up being wrong, then you want to figure out why. But a lot of this is just trying to peel back the haze and dig into that word or phrase that makes a difference. One thing I will do is when I'm stuck on a really hard question, sometimes I will just compare the answers word by word. I'll be like, okay, are those words the same? Because sometimes with like answer choice C, I'll be like, oh, I think it's wrong because it says many. And then I'm like, oh wait, actually D says many too. It doesn't say many, but it says many in a different word. So that can't be the deciding factor since they both use that word, right? So, or a word that's synonymous with many. So then it's like I'm going through and I'm like, okay, well, these words are different, and actually I could see why one would be better than the other given the question.
Okay, and then, so if for timed sections, and like I especially find with the test, a lot of the ones I'm getting wrong at the end are also because I don't have time to answer them.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm like practicing a lot with drilling, is that something that kind of just comes with like getting more confident in early answers? Or like, so if I predict an answer in a logical reasoning and I'm pretty confident on it, is it okay to just like pick that answer and move on? Like, I'm trying to just figure out how to like maximize my time and finish the section.
Well, so speed does increase as your confidence increases, and that's because usually your confidence is increasing because you're seeing more and more reasons why something is right or wrong. Like tonight when we were doing the parallel reasoning questions, you know how like a lot of the wrong ones were wrong for multiple reasons?
Mm-hmm.
People could like totally get rid of D and be correct for doing so because D was wrong, but they got rid of it because a word that was like 2 sentences in, they're like, oh yeah, usually that sucks, and they're like, I'm out of here, and they're confident, but then we talk about it and they're like, oh, I didn't even see that should would have made it wrong as well, and that early if and the belief would have made it wrong. So the more you learn as you try to unpack the test in drilling, like, because drilling is just going to get harder as you do better, right? The more you unpack it, the more things you see, and the more things you see, the easier it is to get rid of things and get rid of them with confidence. A lot of times people are debating because they only see one problem with answer choice D, whereas in reality there are 3, and if they saw 2 of them, they'd be like, they wouldn't have even been debating it. And so my long and short of that is speed is a function of your understanding, which comes from digging into the details. And Also, I don't want to say this because it can be misinterpreted sometimes, but you know, when you're going through a question, if you feel good about it, just keep moving. Because I do think that sometimes people like drill so much that they slow down, and then when they go take a test, they're doing question one and they're like going through it slow. It's like if you get it, just be like, cool, I get it. Yeah, I see why D strengthens, and move on. I'm not saying not to read answer choice E or whatever, but read it quickly and be like, yeah, I can see why it doesn't, and move on. So it's okay to move fast when you're feeling good about the argument.
Okay, thank you. That was very helpful.
Yeah. Any other questions on this, on studying?
Not for me, thanks.
Cool.
A question about reading comp.
Sure.